Silence filled the stars. Then humanity's armada broke through. The galaxy had been quiet for a very long time. 300 years of silence stretched across the void between stars, a silence enforced by those who believed they had the right to decide which species could travel among the stars and which could not. The Collective, an ancient alliance of 12 different alien races, had ruled over hundreds of star systems for thousands of years. They had built their empire on a simple rule: no young species could leave their home system without permission from the Collective. Those who tried to break this rule were destroyed without mercy. Earth had learned this lesson in the year 2847. On that day, a single dreadnought appeared in the sky above New York City. The ship was enormous, stretching nearly 5 kilometers from end to end. Its shadow fell over the city like a dark blanket, blocking out the afternoon sun for 6 long hours. The people of Earth watched in terror as the alien vessel hung motionless in the sky, its weapon systems glowing with barely contained power. No shots were fired, no words were spoken, no demands were made. They did not need to explain themselves. Their message was perfectly clear to every human who looked up at that massive ship: stay in your place or be destroyed. After 6 hours, the dreadnought simply vanished, jumping away to whatever distant corner of the galaxy it had come from. But the memory of that day burned itself into human history. Every child learned about it in school. Every government built their policies around it. Every dream of exploring the stars died a little more with each passing year. Or so they believed. Commander Lisa Grant stood alone on the observation deck of Outpost Sentinel, humanity's most distant military installation. The station was hidden in the shadow of Neptune, the farthest planet from the sun, tucked away in a position that made it nearly invisible to casual observation. From here, Lisa could see the cold blue glow of the ice giant filling half her view, while the other half showed nothing but the endless darkness of deep space. She was 53 years old, with dark hair that had begun to turn at the temples and eyes that carried the weight of too many secrets. Lisa had served in Earth's defense fleet for 30 years, rising through the ranks with a combination of skill, dedication, and an ability to keep her mouth shut about things that needed to stay hidden. The door behind her slid open with a soft hiss, and footsteps approached across the metal floor. "You wanted to see me, Commander?" asked a younger voice. Lisa did not turn around immediately. Instead, she kept her eyes fixed on the stars, as if searching for something in that vast darkness. "Lieutenant Price," she said finally, "come stand with me." Daniel Price was 31 years old, with short brown hair and the kind of face that people trusted instantly. He had been assigned to Outpost Sentinel 2 years ago, and in that time, Lisa had come to rely on him more than almost anyone else under her command. He was smart, loyal, and most importantly, he knew how to keep secrets. Daniel walked up to stand beside his commander, following her gaze out into the void. 300 years, Lisa said quietly. 300 years of hiding in the shadows. 300 years of pretending we were happy with our little corner of the solar system. Daniel shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He had heard Lisa talk like this before, late at night when the station was quiet and there was no one else around to listen. He knew she was not just making conversation. "The Collective believes we are good little subjects," he said carefully. "That is what the World Council wanted them to think." Lisa finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were sharp and bright, filled with an intensity that made Daniel feel like she could see right through him. "The Council wanted us to survive long enough to have a choice," she said. "A real choice, not just the option of dying bravely or dying quietly. That time is coming, Daniel, faster than most people realize." She touched a control panel on the wall, and a holographic display flickered to life in front of them. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of the outer solar system, with Neptune at the center and hundreds of small markers scattered throughout the surrounding space. Red markers, Daniel noticed, the color that meant danger. "Patrol routes," Lisa explained, pointing at the markers. "They have been watching us for generations. Every ship that comes within 1 billion kilometers of the edge of our system, they track it. Every communication that leaves Earth, they intercept it. They think they know everything about us." Daniel studied the patrol patterns. They were regular and predictable, the movements of a force that had grown comfortable with its own superiority. They did not expect trouble from humanity. They had not expected trouble from anyone for a very long time. "They think we are afraid," Daniel said. "We were afraid," Lisa replied. "For a long time we were very afraid. The memory of that dreadnought over New York kept us obedient for nearly a century, but then something changed." She touched another control, and the display shifted to show a different image. A barren red landscape scattered with excavation equipment and temporary shelters. "Mars," Daniel said, recognizing the location. "The archaeological dig at Olympus Mons." Lisa nodded slowly. "The dig that changed everything. In the year 2901, a team of archaeologists discovered something buried beneath the Martian surface, something that had been waiting there for millions of years, long before the collective even existed." The display zoomed in on a massive underground chamber, its walls covered with strange symbols and filled with technology that looked nothing like anything humans had ever built. The machines were elegant and powerful, their designs suggesting a level of advancement far beyond what humanity had achieved. "An ancient civilization," Daniel whispered. "I heard rumors about this, but I never knew the details." "Very few people do," Lisa said. "The discovery was classified at the highest level immediately. Only a handful of government leaders and military commanders were allowed to know the truth. What they found beneath Mars was not just the remains of some long-dead culture. They found technology, Daniel. Jump drives that could fold space and travel between stars in the blink of an eye. Shield generators that could stop weapons they had never even imagined. And power sources that made our best reactors look like children's toys." Daniel stared at the images on the display, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. If this was true, if humanity had possessed this technology for over a century, then why were they still hiding in the solar system? Why had they not used these discoveries to break free from collective control? Lisa seemed to read his thoughts. "You are wondering why we did not act sooner, why we spent 140 years sitting on technology that could have freed us." "The thought crossed my mind," Daniel admitted. Lisa smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Because we learned from the mistake that almost destroyed us the first time. When that dreadnought appeared over New York, humanity had weapons. We had ships, defenses, brave soldiers ready to fight and die for their planet. But we did not have enough. We were not ready." She turned back to the viewport, her eyes finding the distant stars once again. The World Council made a decision after the visit. They would not make the same mistake twice. They would not reveal their hand until they were certain they could win. So they took the technology from Mars and they hid it away, not to abandon it, but to study it, to improve it, to build something that could truly stand against the collective. The holographic display changed again, showing a location Daniel did not recognize. It looked like an asteroid field, but the rocks were arranged in strange patterns, and he could see lights moving among them. "The Belt Shipyards," Lisa said, "hidden in the asteroid field between Mars and Jupiter. For over a century, construction crews have been working around the clock, building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." Daniel felt his heart beginning to beat faster. "How many ships?" "As of last week, 4,217 combat-ready vessels. Carriers, battle cruisers, destroyers, frigates, all equipped with technology based on what we found on Mars, improved and upgraded by human engineers over more than 100 years." The number hung in the air between them, almost too large to comprehend. 4,000 ships. The entire official Earth defense fleet consisted of maybe 200 vessels, most of them outdated patrol craft that could barely defend against pirates, let alone a proper military force. There are also training facilities on Europa, Lisa continued. Hidden beneath the ice, where sensors cannot penetrate, combat academies disguised as mining colonies throughout the outer system, research laboratories developing weapons the collective cannot even imagine. We call it the Exodus Project, and it has been the largest secret in human history. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. Why are you telling me this, Commander? I am just a lieutenant. I should not have clearance for this kind of information. Lisa looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because the project is almost finished, Daniel. After 140 years of preparation, we are finally ready to step out of the shadows. And when that happens, I am going to need people I can trust standing beside me. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small metal badge. It was shaped like an eagle with its wings spread wide, clutching a star in each talon. The symbol of the Exodus Project, though Daniel had never seen it before. I am offering you a choice, Lisa said. The same choice that was offered to me 20 years ago. You can take this badge and become part of something bigger than yourself, or you can walk away and forget everything I have told you tonight. There will be no consequences either way, but once you put this on, there is no going back. Daniel looked at the badge in Lisa's hand. It was small, no bigger than a coin, but it seemed to carry the weight of the entire future of humanity within it. He thought about his family back on Earth, his mother, who still lived in the house where he had grown up, his younger sister, who was studying to become a doctor, his friends, his memories, everything that made him who he was. Then he thought about that dreadnought hanging over New York, casting its shadow over generations of human dreams. He thought about all the children who had grown up being told that the stars were forbidden, that their species was too small and weak to join the rest of the galaxy. Daniel reached out and took the badge from Lisa's hand. What do you need me to do? He asked. Lisa smiled, and for the first time since Daniel had known her, the expression reached her eyes. For now, nothing, she said. Continue your duties as normal. Do not speak of this to anyone. When the time comes, you will receive new orders. She turned back to the viewport, and Daniel joined her in looking out at the stars. How long? He asked. How long until the time comes? Lisa did not answer immediately. She seemed to be calculating something in her head, weighing possibilities and probabilities against each other. Soon, she finally said, very soon. Far away from Outpost Sentinel, in the cold darkness between Jupiter's moons, Admiral Moore stood on the bridge of the command carrier Endeavour. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull bristling with weapons that had never been fired in combat. It was the flagship of the Exodus fleet, the secret armada that humanity had spent over a century building. Was 61 years old, with hair cropped short in military fashion, and a face weathered by decades of service. He had been a soldier for most of his adult life, starting as a young recruit in Earth's defense fleet and rising through the ranks until he was eventually recruited into the Exodus Project 30 years ago. In all that time, he had never stopped preparing for this moment. Status report, he said, his voice calm and steady despite the tension that filled the bridge. All fleet divisions reporting ready, Admiral, replied his communications officer, a sharp-eyed woman named Cole. She was 45 years old, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun and fingers that danced across her console with practiced efficiency. The 1st through 10th battle groups are in position around Ganymede. 11th through 20th are holding in the shadow of Callisto. Reserve forces are standing by in the belt. Nodded slowly, studying the tactical display that filled the main. Thousands of blue dots represented human ships, arranged in precise formations that had been planned and rehearsed countless times over the years. And though he asked, his expression darkened. Long-range sensors show their fleet assembling at the staging point in the Alpha system, Current estimate is approximately 200 combat vessels, with more arriving by the hour. 200 ships. Under normal circumstances, that would be more than enough to destroy every human vessel in existence. They had crushed far larger fleets with far fewer ships in the past. But these were not normal circumstances. Turned to his tactical officer, a young man named Christopher Wells, who had been born on one of the hidden training stations and had never known a world where humanity was not preparing for this day. What triggered their response? Asked. I want to know exactly what happened. Christopher pulled up a series of images on a secondary display. They showed a small space station floating among the rocks of Saturn's rings, its hull marked with the insignia of a mining company that did not actually exist. 3 days ago, an inspection squadron conducted an unscheduled patrol through the Saturn system, Christopher explained. They discovered Research Station Theta, one of our secondary shipyards. The station commander tried to destroy the evidence before they could get close, but their sensors were too fast. Felt a cold anger building in his chest. They had been so careful for so long, hidden their activities behind layers of deception and misdirection. And now, just when they were finally ready to act, some random patrol had stumbled across one of their installations. How much did they see? He asked. Enough, Christopher replied grimly. The station was in the middle of constructing 3 destroyers that would have been able to identify the technology as non-human in origin. There is no way they could have missed the jump drive components. Closed his eyes for a moment, processing the implications. They now knew that humanity had been hiding things from them. They knew about the advanced technology. They would assume the worst, and their response would be swift and brutal. So they are coming to make an example of us, he said quietly. Yes, sir, Christopher confirmed. Based on their fleet composition and trajectory, we estimate they will reach the solar system in approximately 72 hours. Their intent appears to be total subjugation of human civilization. Opened his eyes and looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting to see how their commander would react to this news. These men and women had trained for years, knowing that someday they would be called upon to fight for the survival of their species. That day had finally arrived, perhaps sooner than anyone had expected, but it had arrived nonetheless. Contact the World Council, ordered. Inform them that Operation Daybreak has been moved up. We launch in 48 hours. Hesitated for just a moment before responding. Admiral, the Council will need time to. The Council knew this day would come, interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. They have known for 140 years. They will authorize the operation. They have no other choice. He stood up from his command chair and walked to the front of the bridge, where the main showed the swirling clouds of Jupiter in the distance. All hands, this is the Admiral, he said, his voice carrying through every speaker on the ship and every ship in the fleet. The moment we have trained for is upon us. They have discovered our preparations and they are coming to destroy us. But we are not the frightened species they remember from 3 centuries ago. We have prepared. We have built. We have waited. He paused, letting his words sink in. In 48 hours, we will reveal ourselves to the galaxy. We will show the collective and every other species watching that humanity refuses to kneel. Some of us will not survive what is coming, but those who fall will fall knowing that they gave their lives for the freedom of every human who comes after them. Turned back to face his crew. Prepare the fleet for departure. We have work to do. Across the vast distances of space, aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, High Commander was holding a council of war. The command chamber was a massive circular room, its walls lined with screens showing tactical data from across the collective's territories. In the center, a holographic projection of the human solar system rotated slowly, marked with every piece of intelligence that had gathered over 3 centuries of observation. Was ancient by any standard. He had lived for over 900 years, his body maintained by technologies that humans could barely comprehend. In that time, he had served the collective in dozens of roles, but his true calling had always been war. He had overseen the subjugation of 37 different species, bringing them under collective control through force or the threat of force. His body was tall and thin, covered in smooth skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes were large and dark, set in a face that showed no expression that humans would recognize as emotion. 4 long arms extended from his torso, each ending in delicate fingers that could manipulate controls with incredible precision. "The humans have been hiding things from us," said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the chamber. "This is not acceptable." Around him stood his senior officers, each representing a different aspect of the fleet's operations. Fleet Master, who commanded the warships. Intelligence Director Torin, who had failed to detect the human deception. Supply Coordinator, who ensured the fleet had everything it needed. And dozens of others, all waiting for their commander's judgment. "The station we discovered was small," Intelligence Director Torin said carefully. "Perhaps it was an isolated project, a rogue faction operating without the knowledge of the human government." Turned his dark eyes toward the intelligence officer, and Torin fell silent immediately. "You suggest that a species we have monitored for 300 years managed to build an advanced shipyard in secret," said slowly. "Without any faction of their government knowing, without any of our surveillance detecting the construction, without any resources being diverted from their official economy." He stepped closer to Torin, looming over the smaller officer. "Or perhaps you are suggesting that we have been watching them for 3 centuries and failed to notice that they were preparing for war." Torin could not meet his commander's gaze. I do not know how they concealed their activities from us, High Commander, but I swear to you there was no indication in any of our reports." "Your reports were useless," interrupted coldly. "Your surveillance was useless. Your entire department has been useless." He turned away from the trembling officer and addressed the rest of the room. "The humans have been deceiving us. The scope of their deception is not yet clear, but we must assume the worst. If they have been building ships, they may have been building weapons. If they have been building weapons, they may have gathered forces. We will not give them the chance to use whatever they have prepared." Fleet Master stepped forward. "The assembly is nearly complete, High Commander. We have 218 vessels ready for departure, with another 50 arriving within the next day." "That will be sufficient," said. "The humans have never fielded more than 200 ships, and most of those are little better than converted cargo vessels. Whatever secret construction they have managed, they cannot have built enough to challenge a proper collective fleet." He waved one of his hands, and the holographic display zoomed in on Earth. "Our objective is simple. We will enter the human system with overwhelming force. We will destroy any military assets they have hidden from us, and then we will remind them of their place in the galaxy." "What about their civilian population?" asked. "The collective charter requires us to minimize harm to non-combatants." Considered the question for a moment. "The charter assumes that the species in question has been honest in their dealings with the collective. The humans have been deceiving us for generations. They have forfeited any consideration the charter might have offered them." The implication was clear to everyone in the room. If the humans resisted, they would be destroyed. All of them. "Prepare the fleet," ordered. "We depart at first light." As his officers hurried to carry out his commands, remained standing before the holographic display, studying the tiny blue dot that represented Earth. He had 37 species in his long career. Most had surrendered at the first show of force. Others had fought, sometimes bravely, but always futilely. None had lasted more than a few days against the might of the collective. The humans would be no different. They were an aggressive species, prone to violence and conflict among themselves. but aggression without power was merely noise, and the collective had more power than any other force in the galaxy. Whatever the humans had been building in secret, it would not save them. Back on Earth, deep beneath the surface of the Rocky Mountains, the World Council was meeting in emergency session. The chamber was a massive bunker, built centuries ago to survive any disaster that might befall the planet above. Its walls were reinforced with materials that could withstand nuclear explosions, and its communication systems were designed to remain operational even if the rest of human civilization was destroyed. 12 people sat around a circular table, each representing one of the major political blocs that governed human affairs. President Maria Santos of the American Federation, Prime Minister Wei of the Asian Coalition, Chancellor of the European Union, and 9 others, all carrying the weight of 8 billion lives on their shoulders. At the head of the table stood General Samuel Carter, the Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces. He was 70 years old, with white hair and a face that had seen too many difficult decisions. He had known about the Exodus project since he was a young colonel, and he had spent the last 40 years preparing for the moment that had finally arrived. "The situation is this," General Carter said, pointing to a display showing the approaching fleet. "The collective has discovered one of our hidden shipyards. They are assembling a battle fleet at Alpha and will reach our system within 72 hours. Their clear intention is to destroy our military capabilities and subjugate our species completely." President Santos leaned forward in her chair. "What are our options, General?" "We have 3 choices," Carter replied. "First, we can surrender. We can reveal the full extent of our preparations, beg forgiveness from the collective, and hope they decide to show mercy." "That is not an option," Prime Minister said firmly. "The do not forgive. If we surrender, they will execute everyone involved in the project and reduce the rest of us to slave status." Carter nodded. "I agree. Surrender is essentially extinction. Our second option is to hide. We could disperse the Exodus fleet, conceal our ships throughout the outer system, and hope the Connaught find them. We would maintain our secret capabilities while appearing to cooperate with whatever demands they make." Chancellor shook his head. "If they have discovered one shipyard, they will look for others. We cannot hide from a thorough search, and the attempt would only make them more determined to root us out completely." "Which brings us to the third option," Carter said. "We fight." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. For 300 years, humanity had avoided this moment. They had built their secret fleet, trained their hidden armies, developed their advanced weapons, all while praying that they would never actually have to use them. "Can we win?" President Santos asked quietly. General Carter was silent for a long moment before answering. "I believe we can. The Exodus fleet is larger than anything they are sending against us. Our technology, based on what we found on Mars, is superior to anything the collective possesses. Our personnel have trained for this scenario their entire lives." "But," Santos prompted. "But we have never fought a real battle," Carter admitted. "All our experience comes from simulations and exercises. They have 900 years of combat history behind them. They have crushed dozens of species who thought they could resist. Even with our advantages, there are no guarantees." The council members looked at each other, the weight of the decision pressing down on all of them. Whatever they chose in the next few minutes would determine the fate of their species for generations to come. "If we fight and lose," said Counselor Al of the Middle Eastern League, "what happens then?" "Total destruction," Carter replied without hesitation. "They will not accept half measures after open rebellion. They will destroy every ship, every installation, every piece of technology we have developed. They may decide to destroy Earth itself as a warning to any other species who might consider defying them." "And if we do not fight, we lose everything anyway," President Santos said slowly. "Just more slowly." She stood up from her chair and walked to the display showing the fleet, studying the formation of enemy ships. General Carter, in your professional opinion, do we have a realistic chance of victory? Carter met her eyes without flinching. Yes, Madam President, I believe we do. Santos turned to face the rest of the council. Then I propose we vote, all in favor of authorizing Operation Daybreak. One by one, hands rose around the table. Some were steady, others trembling, but every single one went up. The motion passes unanimously, Santos declared. General Carter, you have authorization to proceed. May God have mercy on us all. 47 hours later, the Exodus fleet began to move. Across the outer solar system, thousands of ships that had been hiding in shadows and ice fields powered up their engines and formed into battle groups. It was the largest military operation in human history, and it was happening in total silence. Admiral Moore stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, watching his fleet come together for the first time. On the tactical display, blue dots converged from a dozen different hiding places, arranging themselves into the formations they had practiced countless times. All divisions report ready for jump, Cole announced. The fleet is at your command, Admiral. Nodded slowly. In a few moments, he would give the order that would reveal humanity's secret to the galaxy. There would be no going back after that. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more hopping that the problem would simply go away. Open a channel to the entire fleet, he ordered. His fingers moved across her console. Channel open, sir. Took a deep breath and began to speak, knowing that his words would be heard by nearly 2 million people across 4,000 ships. This is Admiral Moore. For 300 years we have lived under the shadow of the collective. We have been patient. We have been quiet. We have watched our children grow up knowing that the stars were forbidden to them. He paused, thinking of all the generations who had worked and waited for this moment. The scientists who had decoded the ancient technology, the engineers who had built the ships, the soldiers who had trained in secret, knowing they might never see their families again. That ends today, continued. Not because we seek war, but because we refuse to kneel any longer. They believe they know humanity. They remember a frightened species, cowering under their dreadnought. They are about to learn how wrong they were. He straightened his uniform, preparing himself for what was to come. All ships engage jump drives on my mark. We will emerge at coordinates Alpha 7, directly in the path of the approaching fleet. When we arrive, maintain formation and await further orders. Do not fire unless fired upon. Looked around his bridge one last time, seeing the determination on the faces of his crew. This is what we were born for. This is what we trained for. This is humanity's moment. Jump in 30 seconds. The countdown began. In a hidden command center on Neptune's moon Triton, Commander Lisa Grant watched the fleet's departure on a secure communication feed. Beside her, Lieutenant Daniel Price stood at attention, his hand unconsciously touching the Exodus badge hidden beneath his uniform. They are really doing it, Daniel whispered. After all this time, they are really doing it. Lisa nodded slowly. The waiting is finally over. Now we find out if 140 years of preparation was enough. On the display, thousands of points of light began to shimmer and distort as the jump drives engaged. One by one, the ships of the Exodus fleet folded space around themselves and vanished from the solar system, traveling in an instant to a point light years away. The greatest gamble in human history had begun. When the last ship disappeared from the display, Lisa turned to Daniel. "Come with me," she said. "We have our own role to play." She led him through the corridors of the hidden base, past security checkpoints and sealed doors, until they reached a small room filled with communication equipment. A single technician sat at the main console, monitoring a dozen different screens. "Is the broadcast ready?" Lisa asked. The technician nodded. "Ready on your order, Commander. The message will reach every human settlement in the solar system within minutes." Lisa sat down in the command chair and composed herself. What she was about to say would be heard by billions of people, most of whom had no idea what had been happening in the shadows of their civilization. "Begin the broadcast," she ordered. A small red light appeared above the main camera, indicating that she was now being transmitted across the solar system. "People of Earth," Lisa began, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of emotion she could not entirely suppress. "My name is Commander Lisa Grant of the Exodus Project. For the past 140 years, your governments have been keeping a secret from you. A secret that has involved millions of your fellow citizens, trillions of credits in hidden resources, and the construction of the largest military force in human history." She paused, knowing that her words were creating shockwaves across the planet. 3 centuries ago, the collective came to our world and demanded our submission. We submitted because we had no choice, but we never accepted our fate. In secret, we discovered ancient technology buried beneath the surface of Mars. In secret, we built a fleet of over 4,000 warships. In secret, we trained an army of soldiers who have dedicated their lives to the freedom of humanity. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes intense as she spoke directly to the camera. "Today, that secret ends. They have discovered our preparations and are coming to destroy us, but we will not be destroyed. At this moment, the Exodus fleet is moving to intercept the collective's forces. We are going to fight for our right to exist as a free species among the stars." She felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. "I cannot promise that we will win. I cannot promise that all of our soldiers will come home, but I can promise that we will never surrender. We will never bow down again. Whatever happens in the hours and days ahead, humanity will face its future standing tall." Lisa paused for a final moment before delivering her closing words. "To the brave men and women of the Exodus fleet, know that the thoughts and prayers of every human being are with you. Fight well, fight bravely, and come home to us when the battle is done. Grant out." The red light blinked off, and the broadcast ended. Daniel was staring at her with wide eyes. The whole planet just heard that, the whole system. Everyone knows now. Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, no more secrets, no more hiding. Whatever happens next, humanity faces it together." She stood up from the command chair and looked at the blank screen where her image had been moments before. "Now we wait," she said quietly, "and we hope that what we built was enough." Across the void of space, the Exodus fleet emerged from its jump in a blaze of light that lit up the darkness like a new star being born. 4,217 ships materialized in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not yet aimed at any target. Admiral Moore looked at the tactical display and saw exactly what he expected to see. The fleet, nearly 300 strong now, arranged in a classic collective attack formation less than 10,000 kilometers away. The two forces faced each other across the empty space between stars, neither moving, neither speaking. For the first time in 300 years, the silence between Earth and the galaxy was about to be broken.